Hello everyone, and welcome to whatever this video is going to become. My name is Zarina, and today we're going to figure out why I DNF'd 4 books in the month of August. August, you might say, Zarina. Yes, August. Today is November. This month is November, so it's been a hot second. But you know what, guys? August was probably like the worst reading month for me. In total, including the DNF books, I had 6 books for the month, and I only finished 2 of them. So. Also, before we do go on, since it is the month of November in the United States, a lot of people will know that means it is Thanksgiving. And though I do hope that everyone had a lovely holiday with their families and were able to get some time off of work if you were lucky enough, I will kind of remind people of the unfortunate nature that has established Thanksgiving as it is. I will be reading a little bit off my laptop because I don't want to get too off track or garbled. Garbled? Is that a word? I think that's a word. So if you see me staring, I'm gonna hold this in my lap. If you see me staring at this guy, know that is why. So as I mentioned, it is Thanksgiving in the US, and I'm hoping that everyone had a good time with their families, but it's also important to remember the true nature of this holiday. Most of us in school learned that Thanksgiving was a peaceful celebration with the native people and the colonizers in like this huge bountiful feast where they get along and celebrate good times. However, much like a lot of American history, this is a lie and instead used to cover a much more gruesome story that most people would rather forget and to try to make us okay with living on stolen land. Unfortunately, the history of mistreatment of Native people is not something we can just ignore or forget because it still continues to today. As someone who is not Native American, I find it important to learn more about the people whose land I live on. Though I still have a lot to learn, I will continue to push to make sure that I'm listening to the voices of the Indigenous communities around me and in the greater North America and other parts of the world. With that said, I would like to introduce you guys to some books that I've read in the past year or have left a really big mark on me that are written by Indigenous voices here in the United States. So I will quickly show you guys those. So unfortunately, a lot of these I did read in the library or as an ebook format, so I don't have a lot of them on me, but a few of them I have added onto my list to my magic teapot that holds all of the books that I plan on buying, so that hopefully when they come out I will go purchase those. The first one is Never Whistle at Night it is a horror anthology by a lot of different Native authors. And if you don't even know where to start and you like horror, I would suggest checking out this anthology. It just has so many different people. So like you can really find someone whose stories work with you and continue to look up their books. I'm not usually a fan of horror, but that one was a lot of fun. Kind of going from horror, not really. This is more like a thriller book, is Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. I believe is how you pronounce her name. Yeah, it follows a young, like, early college age girl after she graduates high school and kind of her journey as an unenrolled tribe member. But also there's a murder in her town and she's trying to figure out who done it. So if you're really into thrillers, I would suggest that one. The author has another book called Warrior Girl Unearthed, which I have not read yet, but is in my physical TBR here inside my house, so I cannot wait to get to that one. The next one is A Snake Falls to Earth by Darcy Little Badger. This is actually one of my top books for the year. I gave it 5 stars. It's a really fun middle grade book, kind of has these like dueling perspectives that takes place in, I'm forgetting what it's actually called, but it's like the spirit realm or like animal realm versus the human realm, and there's like a meeting with the 2 characters. Really fun. And this is also another author where I have another one of their books on my electronic TBR floating in the aether and also in my book teapot, and that is the book Ilazo, I think is how you pronounce it. I try really hard because I see it and it looks a lot like elote, like corn in Spanish, and I was like, it's not corn. I see it and I'm like, corn, no, Ilazo. I switched the vowels anyway. And then next up is Healer of the Water Monster and Heroes of the Water Monster by Brian Young. These 2 books I also got from the library at when I was in Arizona, which was a really fun read because they actually take place in like the Mesa Tempe area in the Phoenix Valley, which was really fun because I was going to ASU, so I was like, I know exactly where these things are in the book. They're middle grade as well. I'm forgetting which mythology this takes place in, but it really does a lot to bring awareness to the water crisis in the Midwest region. So I feel like if you have a young reader who is interested in that, or like you would like to introduce a topic to it but bring it in a fun way, I think those books are fantastic. I remember loving both of them, and I cannot wait to see if the author publishes anything new. And then this one's an older one that I read in high school, and this one is The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. I don't remember a lot of the details from this book. However, I remember that as a high schooler, it really started changing my perspective in whose voices we listen to. I got really lucky, and in high school, a lot of my curriculum did not happen to do with the AP book lists like many schools do. I got a chance to read this book, as well as stuff like The House on Mango Street by, forgets author's name, but just kind of stuff that's not on your typical high school English curriculum. Did not help me on the AP English test. I got 2s on both, but did help me in real life, and I still graduated with an English degree. So, haha, take that AP, forgets the words for test. Take that AP tests. You suck. Anyway, continuing. And then the final book that I have on my list to quickly introduce to you is Custer Died for Your Sins, an Indian Manifesto by Deloria Jr. This book is by far the densest book that I have on this list. It is relatively short, but the topics mentioned in the book tend to be more difficult. It's not fiction, it doesn't have a story element to it. Like, it is purely someone's thoughts and like bringing history into context from Native American perspective. I will apologize for the fact that I'm just saying like Native Americans, indigenous people of North America, because there's hundreds of tribes and different systems of like different mythologies and stuff like that. This is just kind of like a brief overview. If you actually read most of these books, they do have quite a bit about the mythology being presented in the books. Back to Custer Died for Your Sins, this one I think changed the way that I think about a lot of stuff in life. Yeah, now that I've read it, I just can't physically go back to thinking any other way. And it's kind of like, you've opened the floodgates, I guess, and like now you can't ignore it. Like, you just physically can't. If there's definitely one book on this list that if you have time or if you have patience for, well, actually everyone should take the time and have patience for, A Custer Died for Your Sins, an Indian Manifesto. That is by far, like, it is a fantastic book. And what is really painful is a lot of the stuff that the author mentions in that book we are barely seeing come to the forefront of conversation in 2024, and I believe this book was written in the 60s or the 70s. So I think, again, it just reinforces that listening to others is just so important. Power structure and dynamics, and listening to people who have less power is always very hard for people with power, because like, why would you want to give it up? And it either takes the people with less power having to forcefully take it back and the people with power seeing it as attack, or having the person with power give up their power. And like, I don't know. There are very few powerful people who I feel like would give up their power willingly, if that makes sense. Yeah, that was a lot. Sorry. That was kind of a heavy start to a video, but now we can actually get into my August books. Here we go. Yeah, so has a certain book that made you DNF it been so bad that you started taking notes on all your books just in case you have to DNF them? No? Just me? Yeah, okay. So I actually was not a note taker before this month of my life, but a note taker on books. I kind of tended to just be like, I'll remember the important bits. But yeah, no, I was so angry at some of these books that I took notes. So the first book that I read for the month was actually a good one. So I had high hopes. I had high hopes for the month, and that is volume 1 of Spy Family by Tatsuya Endo. And sorry, again, butchering names. Y'all know I'm not gonna do a very good job. Cool. Yeah, I love Spy Family. I've literally seen it 100 times. So I decided to get the manga because I really cannot wait for the next season. I love Lloyd. Wait, let me show you my face. Hold on. Just look at him. He's just fantastic. Oh, I guess also, if you've never heard of Spy Family, basically, this man, he goes by the alias Lloyd Forger, but his spy name is Twilight, and basically he is being sent to this country to try to keep world peace, but as a part of his mission, he must get a wife and a daughter and get his daughter into a super, like, honors school to get close to the leader of a specific party to keep world stability. But he is a spy. his wife that he picks turns out to be an assassin, and his daughter is a telepath. And this first one is kind of just setting them all up, and they're so funny. It is so good. The type of random situations that happen where, like, they have a adorable family dog that they don't get in this volume, but I do know because the show, I love him. They're right there. Yeah, I have so many of them just floating around. I think there's another Lloyd and Yor down there with a bond somewhere. I believe it is there's like a subplot of romance, and it is so slow burn. It is so good. I would definitely, especially if you're like getting into anime or want to read manga and you don't know where to start, Spy Family is a really good one. I rated it 5 stars, so you can see we started off really, really good for this month. Now it is time to get into the first book that I DNF'd, and unfortunately for me, who wants to yap about it to the ends of the earth, I cannot talk about it because it's under the S&P boycott. Yeah, which really surprised me because I didn't realize when I bought it to read it, because this is a really popular old book, and I mean old, like over 10 years old, but I will refrain from talking about it even though it was terrible, and I don't understand how people liked it. Cool. So now I finally do get to yap, because the next book that I read for the month was Forgotten 5 by Lisa McMann. This is a middle grade series that has these 5 characters. I cannot remember their names for the life of me. And they're on this like island that like all their parents were criminals of this society because they had special powers. So they ran away to this island peninsula thing with like this forest where like they can't be reached, and all their parents like left or died. So now they must choose like to go back to civilization or not to deal with their powers and stuff. So I used to like Lisa McMann books. I read a good chunk of the Unwanted series, and I think the only reason I didn't finish them was because I kind of grew out of middle grade. So it was around like end of high school, early college. I remembered when I was reading the Unwanteds, I didn't want to read them as much. Like the first couple books I was like, yes, I reread the first one like 2 or 3 times. I enjoyed it so much. But when I got to like the 5th or the 6th one, I was like, this kind of sucked. It was kind of boring. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to go back and read the Unwanted books, so let me just read the new series. And unfortunately, I was incredibly disappointed by this book, and I have notes. So let me tell you why I was incredibly disappointed with this book. Yeah, so we know that we started off to a bad start because I was only 32 pages in, and I made sure that like future me would know I was only 32 pages in because I was having some issues with this book. So one of the first things that happens in this book is that the main, who I'm assuming is the main girl's father, dies. Like straight up, like the first page. Yeah, literally, he's dying. Bertie Golden's fingers were still stained with dirt from digging her father's grave. Tears smudged her cheeks. When I'm gone, he'd whispered to her, look through my crate. I've left you. His fingertips had sparked one last time and gone out, leaving them charcoal-tinged and lifeless. His laboring breathing had slowed, and he'd closed his eyes. It is the first thing that's happening. I have no connection to these characters, and you're telling me that I need to care about this girl's dad dying because she does. But you haven't established why me, as the person reading the book, should connect to this character so that I feel her death. And like, the author attempts to try to do that because they spend the next 6 chapters, literally 6 chapters, going back in time and like reminiscing about times when the guy was alive. If you know me, one of my biggest I can't even speak properly, I'm so mad. I can never speak properly, but it is worse. One of my biggest pet peeves in books is when stories go back in time for large chunks of time because they're like, oh, we forgot to provide this background. And I feel like this is the most stupid way I think it's ever happened in a book that I've read. Because what do you mean, page 1, her dad dies, but then we spend the next 30 pages pretending like literally like the way it's written is like the time is happening normally, like the death, like we didn't go back in time. I'm like, why then did you not start the book at that point, which was like maybe a week or 2 earlier than the dad's death, and then get to the dad's death, because then I might have had an emotional connection to it, and 2, wouldn't have been pissed that you spent all this time with this. Okay, yeah, so that was just page 32. I kept reading, and my next column happened about 60 pages in, because there are 5 main characters, and other than Bertie, like the one we're introduced to first, I could not tell you their names or them apart, even though they have different powers. Like their personalities are like almost identical. And when they're introduced, they are introduced like, they're literally introduced like, this is this person and this is their power. and then we don't see them for like a chapter, and then all of a sudden they come back doing something, and then like they don't mention their name, but you're supposed to know from their power. I'm like, I don't remember their freaking power. I have no emotional connection to how they got this power and why this specific person has this power, and their personality like kind of fits, but they're so shallow. The characters were like so shallow that I just literally, up to page 150 where I DNF'd, I could not tell them apart. And especially because they would like, yeah, and this magical part of their power happened, and I just feel like, what? Who is this? Where did this kid come from? Yeah, and then also around page 60 is when I realized this book had like zero tension. So like I've mentioned, these kids are like on this like island, and they have plenty of food, plenty of water, they know how to survive by themselves, they have these magical powers, and like the only thing that is driving the story is that Birdie, that thing that her dad mentions, is like this map. And this is not a spoiler, it happens in the first, well, it happens in chapter 7, because you know, they spend the whole 6 chapters going back in time. Chapter 7, they mention like this map that her dad left to where like they have to go do this thing on the, like, in civilization that their parents haven't been to. But like, other than her choosing to go follow this thing, there's no other source of tension. Like literally, like and so two of them leave to go follow the map, and then at first 3 of them stay behind. And I agree with the 3 of them who stayed behind, because what do you mean they have food, they have water, they know how to survive, they're not in danger because of their powers? Like, what do you mean? they need to leave the island. Please tell me, because honestly, I would like to know, because that might have gotten me to read further in the book. But yeah, no, and then like they get to civilization, and like they don't know how things work because they haven't been introduced to it. And I think it's one of those situations where they have like an encyclopedia, but they only have like letter A, so they only know like these things. And I don't know, I just got so annoyed with it. I was like, I can't. After the DNF from the first book that I DNF'd left such a doozy on me that I was like, I can't do this. I literally cannot do this. So yeah, I really don't recommend. This book was also so bad, I wasn't even like in the mood where like, maybe one day I'll reread it. Maybe one day I'll come back to the series and try again. This fully, I finished it and was like, okay, immediately into the giveaway sell pile. Yeah, okay, next book. So, as you guys may know, I'm a huge fan of romance, so that is why it is a complete surprise that the next book is a romance book. This is the other one I DNF'd, and that is The Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura. I just butchered that pronunciation. Yep, you guys, this was so bad. My first note comes at chapter 2, because the characters were giving me so much whiplash with their characters that I just like, first she would be like, this is something I do all the time and that I'm really good at, and then like in the next chapter she'll be like, oh, but I'm so like, I can't do this thing. Or like, the biggest one was like the main female love interest with the guy, like it's supposed to be like enemies to lovers, but like literally like in the first chapter she's like, I hate this guy, he took this blah 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 blah, which happens in an Allie Hazelwood book and like makes sense. I think he stole like her research to do this specific dig. Yeah, I would be pissed too. So tell me why the second you see him you're suddenly like, he is so hot, if I don't jump his bones at this exact moment that I will actually melt into a puddle in the Mexican jungle. And then literally like that would be fine. I was like, okay, we did a flip, like this is chill. And then all of a sudden she'd be like, but I hate his guts because he looked at me the wrong way. And I'm like, ma'am? Ma'am. And then she'd be like, but he's so hot, and then but I hate him. And I'm like, but like she wouldn't actually hate him, she was just saying that she hated him because like there was like no body language or any kind of part of the scenario explained. She was just like explaining her thoughts, and I was like, girl, I don't care actually. And I love romance books, and this was pissing me off. Another thing that I had an issue with, I would just read you a quote of what I read and what I said, and it was, just because it's a romance novel doesn't mean there doesn't need to be any other forms of tension. So there technically should be tension, because like the main guy is revealed that someone in his family is sick, and he's like on this dig trying to get the money he needs for their treatment. But like it is so forgotten all the time, and like because these people both can and for some reason can't keep it in their pants, it becomes, that's like the only problem that they're having, like whether they're going to make out in the Mexican jungle or not. And I'm like, as someone who loves romance, you can't just forget your side plots. Dude, I was so excited to read this. It's supposed to be like an Indiana Jones-esque, like anthropology? That's not right. Archivists? Architects? It's an A word where you go in and you dust off like bones and stuff. It's not anthropology, because that's the study of archaeology. I turned into the letter A, thesaurus. But yeah, so I love Indiana Jones. I just love history. I just love history, and I love things to help us find history, and like especially when it like complicates the history we already know. Love stuff like that. So I unfortunately DNF'd this at page 170. I was like, I can't do it. So I actually do love somewhat like cheesy, over the top books, but like this one was just so aggravating and was not enjoyable. Like I was so busy trying to remember something the character said and like trying to follow her that I was like, girl, you're tired, I'm tired. I love smut. I've mentioned that in other books. There was just weird terms for things, and just like the amount of like, these people could not possibly have any other form of connection other than their like sexual connection. So the next book is Titus Andronicus. Yep, Titus Andronicus by William Shakespeare, except this is the play on Shakespeare. This one's specifically rewritten by Amy Fried. Yeah, I've purely DNF'd this one because I was like, well, F it. I DNF'd 3 books this month, I might as well DNF this one. So the thing about the play on Shakespeare books is that like each author who translates them is kind of bringing them forward into like modern context and making it a little more accessible for the people who are reading them. The first one that I read was The Tempest, and I forgot who did that translation, but I really enjoyed it. He made it really easy to understand with, I feel like, not losing a lot of the original language, but just changing it enough where like you don't have to go like look somewhere else and be like, what does this word mean that we don't use in this context anymore? And I did have a slight feeling in this person's preface. They were like, I can't, like, how do you even translate Shakespeare, because he is like this almighty figure in writing. And I'm like, okay, lady, I understand that us peasants don't understand Shakespeare, which is really funny because Shakespearean plays were made for peasants, but like, yeah, but it was kind of just one of those like higher ed, better than thou explanations to her translation, and she did a lot less. She's like, I'm only fixing the things that I feel like need to be fixed, which is like only like really like 2 sentences. And I was like, girl, no. You want me to read this? No. Yeah, I love reading books, cannot stand Shakespeare. The only thing I actually like really enjoy is Hamlet, and then I didn't like super enjoy it. I'll never reread it, but The Tempest was readable. But this one was not. I couldn't do it. I literally have spent months trying to get through this tiny ass play, and I was like, I can't take it anymore. You guys, we finally did it. We reached the last book of the month, which I actually read, and that is The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. And you guys, so I have my opinions on the Inheritance Game trilogy. I remember really enjoying the first book and then kind of being iffy on the second and third book, but like being decently okay with how the third book ends. Like the first book is definitely the strongest one. So last Thanksgiving week on Black Friday, there was like a swap meet festival thing by my aunt's house, and one of the people there was an independent bookstore, and it was on my list. This is before I was on Book My Man. It was on my list, and I just wanted to support an independent bookstore that I hadn't before. So I bought this one. I bought another book called Fireborn, which a review is coming for later because I just read it this month. And then they also gave me an ARC as like a special giveaway for another book, which I forgot what it's called, but I have that. Which the actual book for that one's out. But yeah, so basically I had it for a long time and I was like, oh shoot, I don't remember liking the end of the Inheritance Game trilogy, and I'm about to go back. And oh my god, did I actually end up loving this book. It is stupid how much I ended up loving this book. So if you don't know what the Inheritance Game trilogy is, basically this girl, she gets a call out of nowhere, I believe, from like a random guy who's like, you are the person chosen to inherit this huge, to play this game, to inherit this huge amounts of money, like billions and billions of dollars of money. And she's the only one not from the family, the Hawthorne family, to be allowed to play in these games to win the inheritance, I believe. The inheritance games. But again, YA-wise, with a lot of romance subplots and just a lot of fun. I did one day with my friend, we were trying to make lists of like who would be your I can fix ems of fictional people. And I was like, I don't have any. And then proceeded to immediately, like the next week, read this book. And I was like, that's right, I have two. And that is Grayson and Jamie Hawthorne. Without spoilers, I did really appreciate that the author did not break up the couple from the trilogy in this book and kind of just, there was no like weird third act breakups, and there was no like weird all of a sudden they're not getting along because of this thing. Like, it was so good, it was so cute. It made me feel like when you got to see Percabeth reunited during the Heroes of Olympus, where like there was no fear of their relationship falling apart and just enjoying couple content. I was like, yes. And then the other character it follows, it was just so good to see him finally start having like a character arc, because I think that was one of my main problems with the trilogy, was like this character just didn't develop. Like, he was so stuck in his personality, which like makes sense for him, but it was frustrating to see, especially thinking that the trilogy was over. So seeing him have some character development, fantastic. Looking at the amount of time I've spent talking and recording, this is probably going to be a much longer video than I usually post. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. Thank you guys for watching. I will not say when this video or my next, well, you'll know when this video is posted because the video will go up. I will not say when my next video is posted because I'm pretty sure I'm cursed, so I cannot say that. But I will say thank you for watching. Hope you have a good start of December and the holidays that go in that. Did you guys know that Hanukkah starts after Christmas this year? That's wild. But see you guys next time. Bye-bye. And then Lloyd is around here somewhere. Oh, he's just tucked into the shadows like a spy. Now I turned it into the letter A of the Thor's. And I don't know what perceived me. That's not the right word. Use of that word. To pick up this book.